Batman Arkham Origins is often cited as the black sheep of the franchise. It's the one made by a different studio, the one with a mostly different cast, and the one made as a prequel to the beloved Arkham Asylum, City and Night. Many even consider the Arkham franchise to be only a trilogy, even disregarding or not even playing Origins. But it's a vast, underappreciated game that deserves to stand alongside the Rocksteady classics. Obviously, Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill are iconic adaptations of Batman and the Joker. Their performances are legendary, and have defined these characters for generations. But I think that both Roger Craig Smith and Troy Baker deserve more credit. They aren't trying to replace the GOATs, but rather play younger versions of the same characters that are, in my opinion, on par with the originals in terms of quality.
How many lives did you just take?
None! I think that was just a little stocking stuffer. A construction site blocking my view.
Smith gives us a Batman still finding his identity. Gruff, impatient, and maybe a little too driven.
I want teeth! I want answers!
And Baker's Joker, he still is unhinged and unpredictable, but is still establishing his obsession with the Batman. The story takes place about 8 years before Arkham Asylum. It's Batman's second year on the job, no sidekicks, no Bat family, just him and Alfred against Gotham. The plot kicks off when crime boss Black Mask puts out a massive bounty on Batman's head, attracting 8 assassins to hunt him down over the course of Christmas Eve. But that's just the setup, because beneath it all, it's really about Batman's first encounter with the Joker, and the beginning of his partnership with Jim Gordon. We see a Batman who's still cold and distrustful, and a Gordon who doesn't yet know whether to see him as an ally or criminal. Watching that trust form, slowly and reluctantly, gives the story real weight. And then there's Alfred. His role in this game feels more personal than ever before. He's not just Batman's butler, he's his anchor. When he tells Bruce that his crusade will get him killed, you can feel the fear in his voice. It's one of the most human interpretations of their relationship that we've ever seen.
Trust fund and too much anger. Got in over your head and I
don't want this to be your end.
Bane is one of the 8 assassins hired at the beginning of the game, and a huge departure from his depiction in the other Arkham games, but in the best way possible. In Origins, he's no longer just a brute, he's intelligent, methodical, and genuinely threatening. The game even writes in his change of character between games into the story, by having it end with Bane getting brain damage post-fight, which explains why he is less of a threat in the following years. Him being able to figure out Batman's identity all by himself and then targeting Alfred in his own home, makes him a physical threat and a mental threat for both Batman and Bruce Wayne. A good chunk into the story, Arkham Origins pulls a major twist. The crime boss everyone's been hunting, Black Mask, turns out to be none other than the Joker in disguise. It's a clever reveal that recontextualizes the entire plot thus far. For Bruce, it becomes less about surviving the night and more about facing an enemy unlike any he's ever encountered. But not everyone loved this twist. A lot of fans were disappointed that Joker ended up being the main villain again, especially after his huge role in both Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. They were hoping for a fresh focus on Black Mask, a criminal mastermind who rarely gets a spotlight in Batman media. Still, the reveal fits thematically. The game Arkham Origins isn't necessarily about Bruce Wayne's origin into becoming Batman, but rather the origins of Batman's twisted relationship with his greatest enemy. Now let's talk about something Arkham Origins doesn't get nearly enough credit for: its overworld. Even though the map is often dismissed as just Arkham City but bigger, there's actually a lot more going on here than people remember. WB Montreal had the tough job of creating a world that feels connected to the later games, but still distinct enough to sell the idea that this is an earlier, rougher Gotham. And honestly, I think they pulled it off pretty well. The map is split into 2 major sections, Old Gotham and New Gotham, connected by the massive Gotham Bridge. Old Gotham is the area fans would eventually recognise as it walled off Arkham City from the sequel. But here, it's still alive. It's messy, cramped, and full of character. It's fascinating to glide through neighbourhoods that you know will later become prisons or gang territories, and see them as active city blocks instead of ruins. New Gotham, on the other hand, feels more industrial and vertical, cleaner but still oppressive. It's a nice contrast that makes the city feel bigger and more complex than any map we had seen up to this point. The entire game taking place on Christmas Eve is one of Origin's biggest strengths. The constant snowfall, the lampposts wrapped in lights, the empty streets, all of it creates this eerie, lonely vibe that perfectly matches Batman's early career. It captures that mix of both beauty and bleakness that Gotham is known for, and the snow effects are still some of the best in the series. There's something special about gliding through a quiet, snowy Gotham as sirens echo in the distance. It's atmospheric in a way the other Arkham games never really replicate. Is the world bigger? Yes. Is it more dense than Arkham City? Well, not exactly. City is still the tightest and most vertical map in the series, but Origins makes up for it with its surprisingly detailed interiors. The GCPD, the Royal Hotel, Blackgate, the Steel Mill, the bank. These locations help anchor the open world and add variety between the snowy rooftops. I especially love traversing below the bridge in the centre of the city as it is collapsing and falling apart. A huge highlight of this game. This game also introduces the fast travel system, which is not only a nice quality of life feature, but it is also tied into the gameplay through the Disruptor Towers. So after focusing on the best part of the game, being the absolutely peak story, it's time to look at the main aspect of the game that drags the overall package down, and is what probably made a lot of players less fond of this game compared to City and Night, and that is this game's side quests. The Arkham games have a rich history of side quests. Asylum introduced the Riddler as its only real one, with an abundance of collectibles and scannable Easter eggs that were blended seamlessly into the atmosphere, and the character's personality was the main draw for players committing themselves to completing it.
It's horrible. How can you even joke about that?
Easily, Doctor. It's not my baby.
City expanded on this concept with 12 side quests, each varying in quality. Some being basic tasks such as stopping random crimes and completing gliding challenges, with others being standalone stories revolving around characters pulled from all corners of DC Comics. You had Azrael's Prophecy, the Mad Hatter's Nightmare Sequence, Deadshot's Assassinations, and Hush's Chilling Reveal. Night has even more of these. The Most Wanted missions tied directly into the open world, and even influences the game's ending. Sure, not all of them landed, but the Season of Infamy quests specifically have some of the best and most memorable standalone moments in the entire series, which I may cover in a future video. Now, when we circle back to Origins, it's easy to forget many of its side quests for not having very interesting stories or innovative gameplay challenges. The Black Mass quest has you destroying Sionis' drug stashes across the city, which, for anyone who has played Arkham City, will feel instantly familiar. It's an exact copy and paste of Bane's side quest from City. There's nothing terrible about it, but it's predictable. It doesn't add anything new or surprising to the formula. And the boss fight at the end, which I'll touch on later, leaves this one feeling very unfinished. Then there's the Penguin, who also gets his own little side story developing from the main campaign, and I mean little. It's over before it even gets started. You track down his arms caches, take out a few thugs, and that's it. It feels like a tutorial for the game's Most Wanted system than a fully fleshed out mission line. Deadshot and Shiva both have their own standalone side quests. Being two of the 8 assassins established in the main story ties these two plot lines into the overall narrative nicely. But the quests boil down to a simple puzzle in Shiva's case and a detective segment in Deadshot's, followed by a boss fight, and then it's over. And while these moments are fun, they leave a lot to be desired. They're enjoyable, sure, but they feel like they end just as they start to get interesting. You never really get the chance to feel the tension or the threat that the other assassins bring during the main campaign. And that's kind of the issue with most of Origin's side quests. They start with good ideas, but stop before they have any time to develop. They lacked a sense of escalation or payoff that made Arkham City's side content so strong. Those are just a few examples, but it underlines the flaws of most of this game's side quests. One that I think the game does well though is, surprisingly, Enigmas. The Riddler being one of the few recurring characters across all 4 games, gave a chance to show his and Batman's early stages of their dynamic. But while I do find it slightly hard to believe that he first encountered both the Joker and the Riddler on the same night, I do like how this version of the Riddler isn't just out to prove that he's smarter than Batman. It actually shows his desire to expose corruption through his own methods, but hints at his emerging obsession with Batman that would become the sole focus in following games story-wise. Gameplay-wise, it's still a Riddler-style collectathon, which I do quite enjoy. Overall, Arkham Origins side quests aren't bad, they're just a little undercooked. They capture the structure of the series formula, but they rarely capture the magic, the storytelling, the suspense, or even the personality that made the side quests in City and Night stand out so much. But that can't be said about the Mad Hatter mission, because I don't know what they were cooking here, but this is one of the best moments across all Arkham games. But is an example of something being short and sweet rather than just short. The world twists into this surreal wonderland nightmare, with giant playing cards, floating platforms, and eerie nursery rhymes. What makes it work so well is how it completely breaks away from the grounded tone of the rest of the game. Arkham Origins is a story about mobsters, assassins, and corruption. So when you suddenly find yourself trapped in a psychedelic dreamscape, it catches you off guard in the best way possible. It perfectly captures what the Arkham games do best, taking familiar comic book villains and reimagining them in dark, psychological, and visually creative ways. And it adds a welcome dose of variety to the pacing of the game. A small but powerful reminder that Batman's battles aren't always physical, sometimes they're mental. Even though Arkham Origins does reuse most of its iconic tools from the previous games, it also introduces a handful of new gadgets that help differentiate its gameplay, and adds some fun new options to Batman's arsenal. The remote claw is a new addition that I really enjoy using. It feels like an extension of the line launcher from the previous games, by allowing you to zip along the wires that you create, but it is also given functionality in combat this time. You can now directly attach enemies to gargoyles, have fire extinguishers fly at them and then explode upon impact, or connect enemies to each other, creating a whole new layer to Predator sequences, due to the high utility of this gadget. The shock gloves supercharge Batman's strikes, letting him break through enemy defenses that normally would differentiate enemies. Shields, armor, even certain brute types. They turn Batman into an absolute powerhouse, but I would argue that they're a bit too strong. There's no denying how satisfying they feel, but it turns every enemy type into the same, making combat feel way too easy and boring, especially with how quickly they recharge. They also let you restart generators during puzzles, which is a nice use outside of combat. The glue grenade. Literally exactly the same as the freeze grenade from Arkham City, but much less appealing from a visual and story standpoint. Boring. The concussion detonator allows Batman to stun a group of enemies for a short time. While not the most creative gadget in the world, it is somewhat useful in both combat and Predator segments. The main combat in Origins is basically the same as in City, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. More of something great is still something great after all. You still have the basic attacks and counters that are staples of the Arkham series. A few new animations make it slightly more unique, and give the impression of a less experienced Batman, which makes sense as he is younger in Origins. The new gadgets that we just discussed are also implemented into the quickfire inputs, which leads us nicely into the boss fights, which is where I think Origins truly shines. Right from the start, the game establishes that Batman isn't just up against goons and thugs. He's facing professional killers. Each assassin has their own fighting style, their own motivations, and their own moment to test Batman's limits. Let's start with the obvious highlight, Deathstroke. If the Mr. Freeze boss battle in City was the ultimate stealth test, then the Deathstroke fight in this game is the ultimate combat challenge. Origins was the first Arkham game that I played personally, and it was this boss fight that really helped me to understand the game's combat system, teaching the player how to properly use quickfire gadgets and the importance of counter timings. Some other highlights include Killer Croc, the game's tutorial boss. He still needs to introduce the player to many of the core combat features, while still not being too difficult for new players, or hand-holding for the returning ones. Firefly. Due to his jetpack making regular punches unfeasible, you are forced to overpower him with quickfire gadgets to win. A really unique boss that I'm shocked we haven't seen anything similar to in the other games in terms of gameplay. Bane. You fight Bane multiple times across the game, with each fight evolving from the last, with the final one becoming a terrifying stealth encounter, where it feels like every little mistake will result in death. There are a few duds, however. The Black Mask fight is over in seconds. He's no different than any regular enemy and can go down in one simple takedown. While I wasn't expecting anything crazy for a character with no powers or special abilities, maybe a unique attack or two would add something to it. And for a character that was hyped up as the game's main villain before the Joker twist, this was a big letdown. A really cool feature that was exclusive to Origins was its online mode. While this mode is unfortunately no longer active, I wasn't able to play it for this video. However, I can remember from back in the day that although not being anything groundbreaking, it was just simple fun. It allowed players to play as regular goons as well as Joker, Bane, and even Dick Grayson and Robin to spice up the gameplay. Batman Arkham Origins may not have reinvented the formula or reached the same heights of refinement as City or Night, but it absolutely earns its place in the series. It delivers one of the strongest stories in the entire franchise, with some of the best character work for many of its characters. Its snowy Gotham is atmospheric and memorable. Its boss fights are some of the most creative and challenging in the Arkham lineup, and the new gadgets add just enough variety to keep the gameplay fresh. Yes, the side quests can feel undercooked. The map leans a bit too heavily on familiarity, and some ideas never get the time they deserve. But even with its flaws, Arkham Origins captures something special. A raw, early version of Batman, still figuring out who he is and what Gotham needs him to be. It's a game filled with ambition, heart, and moments that stand toe-to-toe with what Rocksteady created. Origins isn't the black sheep of the Arkham franchise, it's its hidden gem. The one most people skipped, and the one that, for many of us, quietly became our favourite. And if anything, revisiting it today only proves one thing. Arkham Origins deserves far more respect than it gets.